Christmas Eve, 1945. A family of 11 gathers in their small-town home filled with holiday cheer. But in the dead of night, a fire tears through the house and 5 children vanish without a trace. No bodies, no answers, just a mystery that's haunted America for nearly 80 years. Were they kidnapped? Burned alive? Or is the truth even stranger? This is the story of the Sodder children, and it's one you won't forget. Let's set the stage. George and Jennie Sodder were Italian immigrants who built a life in Fayetteville, West Virginia. George, born Giorgio Soddu in Sardinia, came to America at 13, worked the railroads, and later started a coal trucking business. Jennie, also Italian, was the heart of the home, raising their 10 kids: Joe, John, Marion, George Jr., Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jennie, Betty, and little Sylvia. They were a tight-knit, middle-class family, respected but not without enemies. George was outspoken, especially about his hatred for Italy's fascist dictator Benito Mussolini, which didn't sit well with some in the local Italian community. In the months before Christmas 1945, strange things started happening. The Sodder kids, Maurice 14, Martha 12, Louis 9, Jennie 8, and Betty 5, noticed a car tailing them home from school. A man looking for hauling work pointed at the house's fuse boxes and warned George, "This'll cause a fire someday," even though the wiring had just been inspected. Then an insurance salesman got furious when George refused his pitch, shouting, "Your house will go up in smoke and your children will be destroyed for your dirty remarks about Mussolini." Creepy, right? But the Sodders brushed it off. They had no idea what was coming. Christmas Eve was full of joy. Joe, the eldest, was away in the army, but the other 9 kids were home. Jennie let Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jennie, and Betty stay up late to play with toys their sister Marion, 17, bought them. Around midnight, Jennie told them to lock the door, close the curtains, and turn off the lights before bed. She went to sleep with George and Sylvia in their downstairs bedroom, while John, 23, and George Jr., 16, crashed upstairs. Everything seemed perfect until 12:30 a.m. Jennie woke to the phone ringing. A woman's voice, unfamiliar, asked for someone Jennie didn't know. In the background, Jennie heard glasses clinking and weird laughter like a party. Thinking it was a prank, she hung up. But something felt off. The lights were still on, the curtains open, and the front door unlocked. Things the kids were supposed to handle. She found Marion asleep on the couch, assumed the others were in the attic bedroom, and went back to bed. Then, at 1 a.m., a loud bang hit the roof, followed by a rolling noise. Jennie dismissed it and dozed off again. At 1:30 a.m., smoke woke Jennie again. She found a fire raging in George's office where the fuse box and phone lines were. She woke George, grabbed Sylvia, and yelled for the others. John and George Jr. escaped from their upstairs room, singeing their hair. Marion made it out too. But the 5 kids in the attic, Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jennie, and Betty, were nowhere to be seen. The staircase was a wall of flames, and George couldn't get upstairs. George tried everything. He broke a window to get back inside, but the smoke was too thick. Marion ran to a neighbor's to call the fire department, but the phone didn't work. Another neighbor tried too. No answer. Finally, someone drove to town to alert the fire chief. Here's where it gets weird. The fire station was just 2.5 miles away, but the fire crew didn't show up until 8 a.m. 7 hours later. The house was ash by then. George's trucks, which worked fine the day before, wouldn't start. His ladder, always by the house, was missing. Later found 22 meters down an embankment. The family could only watch as their home burned, yelling for the kids. Marion later told the Raleigh Register in 1976, "I kept watching the windows, but I never saw one of the children. I never smelled burning flesh." That detail stuck with them. When the fire was out, authorities searched the ashes. They found nothing. No bones, no teeth, not a trace of the 5 kids. Fire Chief F.J. Morris said the blaze was so hot it cremated their bodies completely. But that didn't add up. A 1947 report from an Ohio crematorium commissioned by the Sodders said even a 2-hour fire at 2,000 degree hours leaves bones intact. The Sodder house burned for just 45 minutes. So where were the kids? The official report blamed faulty wiring, but George knew better. The house had been rewired and inspected weeks before. Then there were those strange events. The insurance salesman's threat about the house going up in smoke, the man warning about the fuse boxes, the car stalking the kids. And get this, the phone company later found the phone line wasn't burned, it was cut. A man confessed to cutting it, claiming he thought it was a power line, but he was never questioned. More clues emerged. A bus driver passing by late that Christmas Eve told the Sodders he saw people throwing balls of fire at their house. In spring 1946, Sylvia, then 3, found a hard green object in the brush near the house. George thought it looked like a pineapple bomb, a type of incendiary grenade. Was this what Jennie heard hit the roof? The Sodders started to believe the fire was arson, set to cover something sinister, like kidnapping. In 1949, George re-excavated the site, hoping for answers. They found human vertebrae, raising hopes. But the Smithsonian Institution analyzed them and said they belonged to a 22-year-old male with no fire damage, meaning they weren't from the fire. They might have been mixed in with dirt George used to fill the basement. Even weirder, years later, Fire Chief Morris admitted he buried a beef liver at the site, supposedly to pacify the Sodders. A liver? In a fire investigation? That's beyond suspicious. Convinced their kids were alive, George and Jennie fought back. In 1952, they put up a billboard on Route 16 with the kids' photos and a $5,000 reward, later raised to $10,000. It became a Fayetteville landmark, standing until Jennie's death. In 1989, they hired private investigators, followed leads across the country, and even wrote to the FBI. J. Edgar Hoover responded but said the case wasn't in their jurisdiction. The Sodders felt abandoned by authorities. Then came the sightings. A woman claimed she saw the 5 kids in a car speeding away from the burning house that night. Another said she served them breakfast at a hotel 50 miles away on Christmas morning, with 2 adults who seemed to be hiding them. A third witness reported seeing 4 of the kids at a South Carolina hotel months later. The Sodders chased every tip, but none led to their kids. Were these real sightings or just false hope? In 1968, 23 years after the fire, Jennie got a letter from Kentucky, no return address. Inside was a photo of a young man who looked strikingly like an adult Lewis, one of the missing kids. On the back, a cryptic note. Louis Sodder, I love. Brother Frankie, Ill Boys, A90132. Some think A90132 might be a Sicilian postal code tying to the mafia theory. George and Jennie were sure it was Louis. They hired a private investigator to trace it, but get this, the investigator vanished, no trace, no answers. The Sodders never gave up. George traveled to Florida, Mexico, even Houston in 1967, where a woman claimed she met Louis and Maurice in a bar. Sylvia's husband drove George to meet them, but the men denied being his sons. George died in 1969, Jennie in 1989, and Sylvia, the last surviving sibling, in 2021, all without closure. Sylvia told the Charleston Gazette-Mail in 2013, I experienced their grief for a long time. I promised my grandparents I wouldn't let the story die. So, what happened to the Sodder children? There are 3 main theories. First, the mafia kidnapping theory. George's anti-Mussolini stance might have made enemies in the Sicilian mafia, active in West Virginia's coal industry. The insurance salesman's threat, the cut phone line, and the Louis photo's possible Sicilian link fueled this idea. Some believe the kids were taken to punish George or sold into human trafficking. But critics, like historian Stacey Horn in an NPR piece, point out Mussolini was dead by 1945, and the mafia theory feels far-fetched without hard evidence. Second, the local conspiracy theory. The delayed fire response, the buried liver, and the quick faulty wiring ruling suggest a cover-up, maybe by corrupt officials. Fayetteville was a small town, and George's business success might have sparked jealousy. But no one's been named and evidence is thin. Third, the tragic accident theory. Some, like Horn, believe the kids died in the fire, and the cursory 1945 investigation missed their remains. Gas cans in the basement could have made the fire hotter, but the crematorium report and lack of bones make this hard to swallow. Today, the Sodder mystery lives on. Sylvia's grandchildren keep the case alive on forums like Websleuths and Reddit, where a 2024 post got over 800 upvotes and 225 comments. Ex-users like Our Dark Horror Vault still post about it, with threads in April 2025 calling it one of America's creepiest unsolved cases. The stories inspired advocacy for missing children, like the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and been featured on History's Greatest Mysteries and BuzzFeed Unsolved. But modern forensics like DNA testing hasn't been applied, mostly because there's no physical evidence left. Nearly 80 years later, we're no closer to knowing what happened to Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jennie, and Betty Sodder. Were they kidnapped in a vengeful plot, lost in a fire that hid their remains? Or is there another truth we haven't uncovered? The Sodder family's pain and hope remind us why we're drawn to mysteries, not just for the chills, but for the human stories behind them. Jennie once said, "I know my children are alive somewhere. I will never give up hope." That hope still burns. What do you think happened that Christmas Eve? Kidnapping, conspiracy, or a tragic accident? Drop your theories in the comments. I read everyone. Share this video to keep the Sodder Children story alive. Maybe someone out there knows something that could crack this case wide open. Until next time, stay curious.